Hello and welcome. My name is Sven Bliedung and I'm very proud to be here today to provide a quick introduction into current challenges and solutions for content production. I've worked since 20 years in content creation on feature films like Avengers or Cloud Atlas, and I was involved in more than 80 immersive media productions. If we want to tell real and emotional stories in VR, we need real humans. I am Sven Bliedung, the CEO of Volucap. Our goal there is to bring reality into virtual reality and enable creatives to tell their vivid stories with real actors. We are based near to Berlin in Germany, on the grounds of Studio Babelsberg. It's actually the oldest large-scale film studio in the world, and even in the early days, technology was important as it is today. Studio Babelsberg is also one of our shareholders, and together with our other shareholders, ARI, Fraunhofer Institute and Interlake, we explore and create new technologies for media production. I created a lot of content, but to dig even deeper in understanding the possible changes in human reception, I started an experiment. I wanted to figure out if I could improve on productivity and, more important, if I'm able to detect changes in my reception and requirements regarding media consumption and production. Even though we are currently having several projects in production, I managed to stay most of the time at home. And yeah, that's my new home office. So I'm staying more than 8 hours per day in VR, doing my daily business things like calls, Excel, docs, editing, you name it. But just imagine sitting outside in the sun, but seeing this instead. And you can easily switch from this kind of workspace into a more comfortable work environment like this here, but without spending thousands of dollars. In reality, you're still outside, but your brain doesn't care. When I go out for shopping, I'm using my phone connected to the Unreal mixed reality headset. Yeah, and it looks like this. It feels a bit weird in the beginning, but wearing a mask and mixed reality goggles at the same time definitely helps me on keeping social distancing with others. And no one really asks me about the Unreal goggles anymore. And the great thing is that I don't even get distracted by the shop owner or others. I just can fade them in or out in my viewport and stay focused on work or watch any content while I'm doing boring analog shopping. And as weird, as it might look, for me as a content creator, it's very important to understand the requirements of upcoming immersive productions, when people will get more and more used to those devices. And I'm very impressed that this is actually already possible today, so it's not a futuristic vision anymore. So when you start working like this, your entry to access virtual worlds get very, very low. Usually when I wanted to play a VR game, I needed to start Steam, connect a headset and do several steps to launch it. This often holds me back for quickly looking into VR worlds or 360 pieces, and instead I watch just the 2D rendering of it. If you work directly in VR, everything is much easier and 3D environments and 3D people became normal. Since good immersive content is much more intense than 2D content, became more boring for me or less intensive to me. It's a bit hard to describe, but the fact is easy, I would say, to test if you ever want to impress your friends in the next horror movie by not being scared anymore. Just try a few horror flicks like Resident Evil and you will be impressed how much less intense the same film genre get. It's a bit comparable to newer film technology and visual effects. If you get used to ultra high definition and the current state of the art in editing, sound and all those disciplines, it will be very difficult to digest older films in standard resolutions. And I can imagine that it will be even more difficult for younger viewers or audiences to convince them with traditional 2D stories in the future as immersive storytelling and technologies evolve. I know that everyone is also talking about increasing productivity with VR and mixed reality devices, and I created several projects in the past when the first HoloLens devices got released, but all those cases so far are very specialized ones. Not like daily working environments where you do your editing, Excel, whatever stuff. But if you really try to force yourself into daily working routines with VR, it's very impressive how good those devices already works. And you get so used to it, at least for me, that it starts to feel more and more normal. You start even to forget the first moment when you really started VR for the first time. I'm sure you're all familiar with this moment. The first moment, and hopefully you all remember that when you first put it on your headset and you just go, wow. This is a unique one-time moment. And I was very glad actually that we were able to capture this historic moment together with the King of the Netherlands, Willem-Alexander, when he tried VR at the Volucap stage for the first time. Content production was always driven by technology. First motion picture devices looked like this. Those were quite similar to current headsets. They were not very social, no one could really afford it for home usage, and content was quite limited. Basically, you could just see this little horse on the right and you have to stare in those boxes to watch anything. After many years of technology evolution, we ended up with TVs. It was the first time actually where we were able to distribute content directly to homes. And people could decide when to watch content without leaving the space. In the next phase, those wall-mounted displays became portable and powerful enough to render interactive content in real time. Content consumption switched from linear to interactive. And now we have portable VR or AR mixed reality screens, which will not just allow us to watch interactive 2D content, but enables us to watch content with 6 degrees of freedom. Since this media is so different, we need to define new rules of storytelling, and let me just briefly or quickly dive into this topic, because it's the first time for us we could define those spaces. Instead of disconnecting ourselves from the story, we are inside the story and we can experience the whole world. Current studies on our brain showing that we memorize those places as real places that we have visited. It's a huge difference to any other content. Creating a movie out of a book is a process that requires a lot of translation. We have a very defined way on how to set up colors, lights, sounds, camera angles, framing to trigger emotions in the audience. And the audience also has learned how to read those rules. It's a bidirectional process that took quite a while and it's still ongoing. In immersive content production, we are at the very beginning of this process. The camera is the viewer. The rules from storytelling, from books, films or games need to be translated to the XR space. If you imagine a low-angle camera in a cinema, this makes the actor more dominant and more powerful. But if you have the same low angle in virtual reality, you basically shrink the viewer, so he would feel like a child or a bug. So the same adjustment triggers two complete different emotional states in the viewer, and it's very important to understand the differences between those. Let's take a step backward and look at the market. To understand the current scope of the situation, it's important to take a quick view on it. You need affordable and good working devices to bring new communication technology to masses. TV entered the market in the 30s. Those first devices were very limited with not much content available. And so TV took 20 years to reach their first 9% of households. After this, technology and content of TV evolved to a level of mass scaling. From this time, adoption skyrocketed and reached 90% of households in the US within 15 years. Today, those evolutions are much shorter. Now with gaming and interactive content has surpassed the film market, we are at the next edge of technology. With more than 1 million Steam users per month, we are talking about 8% of US households owning a VR headset. That's a similar situation of device availability like TV business in the 50s. But numbers are increasingly way faster than those in the early days, because content distribution and hardware manufacturing are much more efficient, providing more and sooner access to technology. Over the next few years, XR will become a driving force for entertainment industry. If we look how 2D visual media has evolved, we got 3 stages. The goal was always to capture reality and tell stories which we could relate to. Over ages, people used color to paint objects which represent reality with drawings. Then with photos, we managed to create 2D snapshots of real sceneries, which are much more similar on what we are seeing with our own eyes. In film, we create a lot of pictures per second to capture or mimic kind of real sceneries in movement. In 3D content creation, we see a similar evolution, but much faster. The early days were based on manual crafted avatars, and most of current productions are still working with this approach. Because most of VR content still uses those pipelines for content production, those results look like cartoonish drawings of reality. For about 20 years now, we have been able to create 3D images using technologies such as photogrammetry. And this helps a lot in creating environments and static objects, but it also used to fake animated people. It's a fake because shape and body are recorded separately, which leads to an unbelievable results. You can see it in most of the current feature films that use digital doubles. There are hundreds of people involved in creating just a few seconds of content, and you still can see that something in the actor looks weird. The reason is because this technology captures the shape and movement separately. And to simulate moving 3D objects, multiple scans are utilized as a base to drive surface and texture changes. The process is quite time and labor intensive, as it requires several steps and additional simulations to get results. As you can see in the picture, you need to do bones, skeleton, muscle animation, and cloth simulation basically. And if you really want to look into creating a pipeline for non-linear creation of characters, it's very messy quite fast, which makes it a very uncreative process. Fortunately, nowadays we have the possibility to create Volucaps, which are based like a film on a lot of static scans, but so fast that it looks like a moving person or actor. And this keeps the whole authenticity of the actor and the person with a whole presence, like claws, wrinkles, all the little details get captured in the same time as you capture the shape of the body. And therefore those technology look much more convincing and much more realistic. And it's even way more efficient because you can use it like a normal camera. You just walk into the capture space, you can start the recording, then the computer is doing the processing, and afterwards you can integrate those characters or those captures, those Volucaps into your virtual spaces. Let us take a look at the cases we have already created. If you look at the Volucap stage itself, basically we capture with 2 terabytes per minute. It's a lot of data, 630 megapixels, and we can capture about 90 minutes per day. We have a diffuse light setup, which enables us to do a lot of relighting afterwards, because often we don't know beforehand what kind of light situation we have to integrate the characters. Here is one example with the quite famous rock band called Bosshaus from Germany. We did a capture with them where we have scanned the whole band with the main performance of a song, and afterwards you were able to do a whole movie with your phone with them, and you can enjoy it and share it with your social media and social contacts and friends, as if you would have a own performance with the band. Here's another little example with another band, the Fantastischen Vier. We did also one of the oldest German hip-hop bands, and this example actually shows not the experience itself, but more like something one of our interns did. He basically tried to show what kind of flexibility this data has in terms of duplicating persons, making like a crowd simulation just out of a simple loop, and creating kind of little music video. So because you have 6 degrees of freedom, we can freely move around with the camera. And also it's possible for live events. So here what you see is the first volumetric live performance across several devices. We used Unreal, HoloLens, and Magic Leap devices. They all have been in the same space. And we used it to integrate a person into the live environment of a scenery. So here you see the volumetric capture, and now you see me placing the virtual moderator into the stage to bring it into position with the HoloLens 2 device. And now this is actually on the live event. And when the moderator left the stage, his volumetric capture, so his Volucap, took over and continued the moderation. And it was quite amazing to see the reactions in the audience, because they could follow it with the traditional 2D camera, but also with Magic Leap, HoloLens 2 or Unreal devices. Here's another case we did together with the most famous news station in Germany called Tagesschau. They are like a state news channel, and they're not very well known, I would say, for being very emotional or entertaining. It's more like very objective kind of news television show. And I was extremely surprised by how people interacted with the content. We had 20 iPads on the IFA trade show. People could use it and watch the content there. And it was a full episode of 6 minutes of a whole show. And what was great to see how people interacted with it. And it wasn't received like a short simulation of something or a short demo case where people after 1 minute took the iPad away. It was really like all the people watched it till the end, the whole 6 minutes. And they really enjoyed it, because when she was, for example, talking about the weather, you see the raining around you, you see flashes coming around you. When she talks about lunar eclipse, you see the planets flying around you, and all these little details that we utilize the whole space makes a huge difference in terms of how enjoyable the whole experience is. Of course, you can also use those characters for using them for digital doubles in cinema, what we're also using right now for feature film, because the resolution is so high that it's very good for crowd simulations and even main actor replacements. And one last quick note about when you start to scan environments. This is just a basketball court we captured from Berlin, and the resolution is actually so high that you can read even the small stickers on the pole. And since people can freely walk around, you can imagine that you might end up with much more feedback loops with the clients as usual, since you can't really fix the angle of what people are seeing, and they can walk everywhere, and you need to be assured that there are no offending posts or texts in the scene. So you have to compensate those with more feedback loops, I would say. Technology always drives the content production. I hope this presentation makes this clear. And with the ability to capture volumetrically now, the production of content became more easy and more efficient. And I would say it's just the beginning of our new journey in terms of creating XR content. And we are the first generation to be honored to design this new technology for our future communication. Thank you very much for your attention, and hopefully you are inspired by my and all the other talks today.
For those who have just arrived, please keep your mic off during the talks and avoid walking on the main stage, please. You can also use the public chat to talk with each other, to ask questions, or if you have any technical issues, please just direct message me, or you can also message it in the chat. Thank you. Enjoy the talks.